There's a lot of coaches out there. It's a big, big, big sea with a lot of fish. And there are some people who view coaching as one-on-one training. It's not. That's mentoring. A true coach will help a person come to their own conclusions about what they need to do, as opposed to telling them what they need to do.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets Podcast. I'm Kevin, and today we are joined by Michael Scarpone. He's been a coach for over 20 plus years and is also the founder of Scarpone Coaching. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thanks, Kevin. It's great to be here. I appreciate you inviting me.
Of course. It's not every day that we get someone of 20 plus years. So I'm very curious about the origin story, the lore. What was the moment when you're like, oh man, I need to do coaching, and more importantly, turn into a business? I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah, so I need to go back to a Noah building the ark. When I first started my career, I started out in graduate school in counseling psychology, and I got my graduate degree in that, and subsequently had some private practices and worked in the mental health field for a while. And at the time, I wasn't able to make a go of it. You know, as you could probably imagine, doing therapy is difficult work, and the money was just not coming in. So I decided to take a job in the nonprofit sector and became CEO of a nonprofit that covered Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. And they were going through a bunch of reorganizations at the time, and I was offered to be second in command of all of New England or take a buyout. And I took the buyout, and the second I took the buyout, I said, I want to do consulting and coaching. I've been doing it a lot. I was a lot of nonprofits were asking me to come in and do some consulting with them. So I had kind of a foot in the door. And then I just launched a career and began that way.
Wow. That's really interesting. And so, I'm kind of curious, when you first started out, who did you decide who you want to help, and how has it changed over the years?
Well, initially I was going to go to nonprofits. That's where I wanted to, because, I had spent a number of years in the nonprofit world and knew it inside and out, especially around things like fundraising and, board development, those kinds of things. What I found out pretty quickly, though, is that many small nonprofits do not have money to pay because they're trying so hard to generate revenues to continue their programs. So I did a lot of pro bono work, and I said, I am going to go into the for-profit sector. And something very interesting happened at the time. When I lived after graduate school, I stayed in Burlington, Vermont. That was where my home was. And I was in the Chamber of Commerce there, and there was a gentleman who was on the Chamber of Commerce with me, became pretty close. His name was Chris. And Chris moved to Boston. Hadn't seen him for years, and I happened to run into him one day. And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm doing some consulting and coaching and that type of thing." And I said, "What do you do?" And he goes, "Well, I do continuous improvement and lean process." And I said, "What the hell is that?" And he goes, "Well, we go into organizations, manufacturing organizations, and we teach them how to streamline their processes and reduce waste." And I said, "Chris, here's the problem with that. If you're not talking about change and you're not talking about developing leaders, you're only going to get to a certain point." And he said, "You're right. You're totally right, because we can only get so far. What gets us in the way is a lot of times the senior leadership, treats it as just another tool, and the culture doesn't really embrace it." So he asked me if I would do workshops in different manufacturing organizations, and I said I would. So I can't tell you how long, but gosh, it has to be 15 years or so. I've been working tangentially with this group. As a matter of fact, there are different belts in Lean Six Sigma continuous improvement. Goes white, orange, green, and black. And I got so intrigued by the whole thing about continuous improvement, I went all the way up to a black belt. And
Wow.
there's a master black belt, which is all statistics. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. Uh, but that opened up a lot of doors, Kevin, for add-on coaching. And from that, it just kind of evolved. So I have a number of certifications. One of the things I bring to the coaching conversation is a perspective from a CEO, a perspective from a coach certified through the ICF as a PCC, the perspective of somebody in continuous improvement, Lean Six Sigma, among other things I bring in. So, one size does not fit all in this world of coaching.
I see. That's really interesting how you made the transition from nonprofit to for-profit. And so I'm kind of curious, how do you, let's talk about marketing for a second. How do people typically find you? How do they kind of what does your marketing look like at the moment?
This is a great question. And I'll tell you why. When I jumped off and did the consulting stuff and the coaching stuff after I left the nonprofit, I literally died on the vine for about 2 years. And I thought that the phone was going to ring off the hook. People were familiar with me. They knew my work. And, oh, Mike, come work with us. That didn't happen. And the reason why it didn't happen is because I had no marketing strategy at all. Little by little, word of mouth got out there. And I was able to start piecing together coaching clients by word of mouth primarily, and some marketing pieces. But anybody starting out has to market. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Find a marketing guru or a marketing program, or there's a ton of them out there that can coach you on this, because you need a constant stream of income coming in. Now, the other thing I would say is that when I started out, I didn't have any resources, or very little resources. So when money wasn't coming in, I was going into the bank account, to pay bills. And eventually that started dwindling down. Throughout my career as a coach, there hasn't been stable income sources. Some months I live like a king, and some months the cash flow is, really not that strong. And it just depends what's in the funnel, which is all a result of marketing, right? So if you really want to make a go of this, there's a couple of musts, but one of the musts is for sure develop a very strong marketing plan and go after it. Go after it.
Yeah. It's really interesting. You said that a lot of your business comes from word of mouth these days.
Yes.
Are you planning to experiment with any new marketing channels, I guess, these days?
I am, actually. I'm looking at a couple of channels right now that I am going to play towards over the next, I'm guessing, probably 6 months. Because, I have not been strong on this, even though I have a very vibrant coaching practice. I got to get in there and really market myself. I just developed, pat myself on the back, a great program. I don't know if there's anything out there, I'm sure there is, for an individual contributor going into a leadership role and all the dynamics that go along with that. So you're not one of the gang anymore. And it's a 6 weeks. I'm still polishing it up, but I haven't seen anything like it before, because it combines some psychological dynamics of the position as well as some tools. So on the one hand, we're talking about, what's your hidden belief system and what are your value system. And on the other hand, here's what conflict resolution looks like, and it integrates the two. I'm doing it in a company right now and just getting rave reviews. Like, people saying that they've never seen anything like this. But the key of this is that there's a coaching component built in to that. So not only is it a tool-based and kind of a new identity-based program, but it's also a lot of coaching on a group basis, which is really exciting. So this I'm going to take into the market. I think there's a huge need for it, and I'll be marketing this through a couple of channels, and we'll see what happens.
Of course, you don't have to give specifics, but I'm kind of curious, are you planning to do content marketing, paid ads? What are you thinking about?
Because I'm in the process of just polishing up the curriculum.
I see.
And getting all the materials together. So I'm a little bit before really thinking, okay, where am I going to go with this? I know that one avenue is manufacturing. They promote individual contributors all the time. And then the supervisors, when they become supervisors, struggle with their role. And, there's a huge market for it. But I think it applies to anybody going into the supervisory role or leadership role. So and again, all the marketing stuff says you got to pick a niche and stick with it. I think that's very true. So you become an expert in one thing. So I'll probably start off with the marketing in the manufacturing area, but probably won't limit it to that.
Okay. Well, thank you for being so open about your thoughts about the marketing stuff. I do want to talk about different coaching modalities because one of the things I love about this podcast is I get to hear the different business models, the different coaching modalities, the things that are working for coaches at different stages. I know some people do one-on-one coaching, some do group, some do organizational trainings. If you're comfortable sharing, I would love to kind of hear your different offers and modalities that you kind of offer through your business.
Yeah, I do all three. Yeah. So I do a lot of training. Now, let me give you a little caveat about this, and I'll probably get hung up on my thumbnails for saying this. Training in and of itself doesn't have a lasting effect. I'll tell you why. I'm an expert in Myers-Briggs, certified in Myers-Briggs, certified in emotional intelligence, and a couple of other pieces. So when I go in and I do a training in, let's say, Myers-Briggs, it's a real fun day. But then there's no follow-up on the part of the supervisors. And that's where it breaks down. Think of all the time management workshops you've ever taken. In my case, it's been a ton, with people like Stephen Covey all the way down. How much of that have I actually embraced in my daily activities? Not a lot of time management, because after I took the course, there was nobody there to work with me and get these ingrained so they become unconscious competence. And that's what we're struggling for in training. You want to be able to, giving feedback. You want to be able to do this without even thinking about it. Now, when I do the training, we're getting into conscious competence. You know that you've got to spend time thinking about how to give feedback. But to take it to the next level, you got to use it all the time. And there's nobody who will follow you on that from a supervisory level because they probably haven't been involved in the training. So there's no what I call stick factor. So what I started doing is I started building in one-on-one coaching into my training packages just so that there's stick, so that people will apply the tools that they're given. Because, the goal of training is to make somebody advance to the next level of excellence. And I don't see a lot of it, I'll be honest with you. Yeah.
It's interesting because I think about the corporate training, big corporation purchase and stuff. And half the time we'd spend days, if not a full entire week, just on this training, only for it to kind of go in the trash, honestly, because it was just mandated by corporate. And there's a real status quo. People love sticking to status quo a lot of times in these big companies.
Well, they do. And part of it is they're afraid of change. People are not afraid of change. It's a misnomer. But they do have a fear of their identity being changed. That's a big piece. Now, if you think about this, I've got a work contract with my supervisor. We know how to play the game. I know what she expects from me. We've done this for a number of years, really play nice in the sandbox together. If all of a sudden I institute or she institutes a tool from the training, the work relationship changes. And that for people is threatening. That's why a lot of times continuous improvement has such a challenge, because what we're doing is we're going into workplaces and we're saying, okay, you're doing it this way. We are going to do it this way. And we're going to save you a lot of time, a lot of waste, and your turnaround times are going to be a lot shorter. And people are like, well, what does this mean to me? That's why the psychological component of all this is critical. But if it lands on deaf ears and it doesn't get any traction, we got problems. We have problems in the training world. That's my caveat. And I love doing training. And I think I would say that my training sessions are a lot different. They're not canned. Matter of fact, I've thrown away training sessions midstream to move on to something else because the group has identified a need that's more pressing. So it's not like fitting a round peg into a round hole, where a lot of the packages that you get or that you buy from different vendors, you can't deviate.
Yeah. It reminds me because I used to be a pharmacist and stuff, and it reminds me of any sort of like healthcare practitioner, right? Like everybody talks about the art and science of like medicine and stuff, and when do you choose like this certain medication or this sort of therapy versus like another therapy or something like that. You build this intuition, and it sounds like you kind of cater to that people at these organizations based off what they need versus like what the curriculum dictates, I guess, right?
Yeah. So I do a lot of mentor coaching also through the ICF. And one of the things I talk with the incoming coaches about is to trust your gut. Like you said, that intuitive feeling that this has got to go in a different direction if it's going to work for this client. And a lot of times I will get these, I don't know, messages, if you will, that says, you got to ask about this. And then that opens up all kinds of coaching opportunities, right? Let me talk about individual coaching for a second, Kevin, because there's a lot of coaches out there. It's a big, big, big sea with a lot of fish. And there are some people who view coaching as one-on-one training. It's not. That's mentoring. A true coach will help a person come to their own conclusions about what they need to do, as opposed to telling them what they need to do. Right. And that's, for me, a critical distinction. And the other piece is that everybody feels that they can hang up their shingle as a coach. And I've never been asked if I was certified by any of my clients. And the truth is always after the but. By getting certified, I've gone through the rigor of coaching basics. All right. ICF is pretty stringent on the requirements. So I can stand from a position of, I understand coaching from a whole different level than most people do who aren't certified.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I'm sure that level of confidence comes out implicitly, whether through like the way you act, nonverbal communication, and all that sort of stuff too. Just the way that you approach the problems too. Yeah.
It does.
It's like
It does.
I'm a MMA / UFC junkie, right? And so like
Me too.
I do things like jujitsu, and it's like when a black belt grabs you, you kind of know. You kind of know from the initial grips,
You
like,
know
oh,
it, right?
you just know. You just know. So it's kind of like
Now,
that.
do you go into the ring?
No, I don't compete, but I am like an avid practitioner. I practice like 6 or 7 times a week and stuff. Just like, yeah, it's pretty fun stuff.
Well,
What do
let
you
me know
do?
if
Do you
you.
do jujitsu or like MMA or something?
Oh, no. Work out daily in fitness chain.
Yeah.
And that really, gets my heart going. I just personally, 6 years ago, I weighed 100 pounds more than I do now and had quadruple bypass. And I was like, you got to make a change. So I picked it up, lost weight, went to the gym, and feel 1,000% better.
Congrats, man. I love that.
Thanks. Well, I think you can agree. I've never regretted a workout.
Yeah,
Sometimes
I've
it's hard
never.
to get me there, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it takes some motivation to get me there sometimes. But after I'm done,
yeah,
I've never regretted working out. Never.
yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I do want to ask something though.
Yeah, sure.
So much of your work is like a lot of this like deep-seated work, right? A lot of deep work, right? Because a lot of people listening to this, there's a lot of coaches that are struggling with like things like pricing strategies and all that. And of course, you don't need to give any hard numbers, but as you think about like your pricing engagements, like what have you gravitated to? Because I know there's some coaches, like beginner coaches, they typically charge hourly. Some do like some sort of value based, other do a retainer or subscription. Like what have you gravitated to, especially when so much of your work is kind of internal. But then again, you also have this like continuous improvement, like black belt, Six Sigma stuff.
All right.
So I'm kind of
There's
curious
a
what you
number of
lean
ways
on.
I could play this.
Yeah.
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 I will tell you what I started charging was anything I could get. Maybe $10 an hour. Cool. I'll take it. You know, the problem is that once you set the price, it's hard to increase it. right? So I always came at this like I'm very skilled. I've gone through a ton of education on this. I've got a number of years of experience. I'm not willing to play for $50 an hour. I'm not going there. If you want somebody to play $50 an hour, feel free. But that's just not me. I got a lot of money invested in my profession. So what I usually do now is I do subscriptions, 3 month, 3 to 6 month. And the reason why I push for that is that the change process happens probably about around 3 months. You begin to see some real traction. In 6 months, you tend to see is real traction. If you do one or two, it may not get you, what you're looking for. So it's usually about 6 months. And a good friend of mine who's a coach charges $5,000 a month. And I said to her, this is several years ago, what happens? What do companies say? And she goes, oh, they balk. And then what I tell them is, if you want to pay me less, find another coach. I'm not going to do it for, any less than $5,000. I say, do they go someplace else? And she goes, no, they'll sign up. And I think there's a value added piece around your pricing structure. It's a difference of buying a Lexus versus buying a Volkswagen. You can get a Volkswagen a lot cheaper and it will go, or you can get a Lexus that has a lot more bells and whistles. So if you're going to price yourself as a Volkswagen, be prepared, because the kind of clients you're going to be getting are people that are capable of paying, $50, $75 an hour. My hourly rate right now is about $300. Do I get it all the time? No, maybe $250 and maybe $200. However, I'll tell you when I don't wave from that is that when somebody wants remedial coaching, all the coaching schools tell you don't touch these people. So for a lot of CEOs, they have a problem employee and they've gone through everything. And now I've got to wave a wand and tap it on their shoulders and they're going to change. Very difficult. I won't wave from a package program. I can flip them. 90% of the time I can flip them. And really have them take a look at themselves by looking at, their belief systems and what are they holding on to that's not working, including some of Shirzad's work around saboteurs, and that gets us some leverage. But I don't deviate from that. I don't deviate from that. So, I think it's up to the individuals about what they charge. Now, if you're just beginning, I get that you got to make a living at this, so you may want to start at $125 an hour. But people will perceive you in a different way if it's only $50 an hour versus $125 versus $250 versus, $300.
Yeah, I'm sure you can always explain the psychological, the things that are going psychologically behind the scenes. But yeah, I do want to switch topics for a second.
By all means.
One thing that I am very interested in is that you've been in this industry for about 20 years. And so I'm curious about your future goals. Like, where do you want this coaching business to take you in the next few years? Do you have any secret dreams, big ambitions, anything like that?
Sure. I'm always going after the next golden ring, if you will. Always the next iteration. I want the business to grow. I want it to grow pretty large. One of my reasons is that my son does this work internally for a bank. And he's always said, I'd love to work with you. And I've always said, I'd love to work with you, but I got to get the clients and I got the cash flow stabilized, because I know my son well enough to know that if I just had him in, the ups and downs in revenue streams would cause him a nervous breakdown. So I said, yeah, we're not quite ready there, but I would like to bring on more coaches, do more work. I would like to have somebody do external sales and just sell our services. Because right now, as an individual, I got to do the accounting, got to do the sales, I got to do the marketing, I got to do the coaching, and it's all, it's a lot of work. So I'd like to really build that up, and I would like to be able to train people into the Scarpone way of coaching, which includes ICF, which includes, looking at a deeper level of coaching rather than just, so what are your beliefs that's holding you back? What are your limiting beliefs? Those kinds of questions, right?
As you're thinking about growth of your business too, what are some challenges or bottlenecks that you're just kind of noticing as you're thinking about this growth?
Doing the business versus marketing the business. That's the challenge. Again, I'm going to get hung by my thumbnails here, but the most successful coaches that I've seen are incredible salespeople and marketing people. I can list 10 of them here in my state that have fair skills, not great skills, but they're constantly working because they're, going to trade shows and marketing, at different conventions that people are at. And it takes resources to be able to do that kind of thing. So being able to sell versus doing the business is always a bottleneck. And how much time are you going to spend in each category? If, like has been maybe a couple weeks out of the year, I'm booked solid for a week or 2 weeks, not marketing. The impact of that is that there's very little in the funnel, which means that when the next month comes around, I might be scrambling. Where's the balance? Where's the balance? Now, we all get into this because we're passionate about the work that we do. I don't know one coach that's not passionate about helping people, right? If you're getting into this business because you want to be a zillionaire and work with CEOs, that can happen, but that's that fire in the belly that you got to keep on flaming about why you're doing this. The mission, if you will, of your coaching business. And by the way, I'd recommend anybody starting out to look at a mission statement and use Stephen Covey's work on developing a mission and just live into that, lean into that mission, whatever that looks like, and the rest will begin to. So for me, looking forward, it's really to build out the business so that I can bring in more coaches, more marketing folks, and really make a strike. I'm playing in a very small pool. When you think about it, I go down, and you're familiar with this, 495 into Boston, outside of Boston. I look at all the buildings and I'm going, man, there's a lot of coaching opportunities here. I think about it nationwide. There's a lot of coaching opportunities. We got to go after them. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially that driving reason for your son too. I'm sure that means a lot personally for you to grow the business as well and leave a legacy.
It does. I have very strong standards. So I've teamed up with other coaches and businesses before, coaching businesses. I never stay because the work that they're doing is so methodical. It's very transactional. It's not transformational work, right? Talk about many of them do peer mentoring as opposed to coaching. I'm in the transformation business. I really want to see you evolve, versus gain skills. Skills you can get anywhere. Evolution into the next level of excellence, a little bit more difficult.
Speaking about people investing into your services, right? For that transformation, I'm kind of curious about the investments you made. So I'd love to play a game if you're open to it.
I'm open to it.
Yeah. So this can be a shotgun experience. You can elaborate a little bit on the story, but it's called First, Last, Best, Worst. And I want to do it through the lens of business investments. So first business investment you remember?
That I invested in or first client?
That you invested in for your coaching business. Yeah.
Website.
Interesting.
Yeah. First coaching experience. People use websites to find people. And if you have, it doesn't have to be great, but every time I've gotten someone who wants to look at me for a coach, they always go to my website. I track that stuff. Always. After I speak, they always go to my website. And that was probably one of the first investments I made. I'm sorry?
When did you make that investment? Like what year of your business?
2005. And it's gone through a couple of iterations since then.
So probably like your first year-ish then.
Yeah, right? The first year. And the second investment was, if I could, QuickBooks.
QuickBooks, it's still around today too.
Yeah, it's still around online. There's other services out there, but I needed to track income versus expenses. And I needed to do it pretty quick because I'm starting to invest in infrastructure.
Okay. Last business investment that you made?
AI note taker.
Ooh. Which AI note taker did you do?
Plaud. Plaud. It fits on the
I reviewed it.
What'd you find?
Can't remember because I reviewed like 10 other note takers for a YouTube video that I did, but I forgot my findings for it. It was like quite a while ago, probably like
Yeah.
3 months
I
ago.
like this. I like this one. It's easy to use. I love being able to upload coaching conversations to my files. And I get one of the big questions out there legally is because it's in the internet, we don't know who surfs the internet or breaks in. Is this really confidential? I'm guessing that AI note takers have kind of dealt with this. I hope. If not, they should.
Yeah.
So I'm just there's a blind faith here. Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
been my last investment.
I'm sure we'll see a HIPAA type of note taker
Yeah,
in the
we
future
will.
or something like that. Yeah.
We will.
Your best business investment.
Getting certified as a coach, ICF. I mean, if you had asked me 10 years ago, I wouldn't have said that. But having gone through my PCC and I'm going to go for my MC, it's a great process. I really recommend people do it. It's a lot of work and it's a heavy financial investment, but I think that people need to check that out. And there's other accrediting agencies out there.
Worst business investment through the lens of you kind of wish you got your money back from.
There's just been so many of them. Software. I mean, some of the software that I bought was like, hey, really? Can't think of one off the top of my head, to be honest with you, Kevin. They've been out there. I know some of the marketing programs that say you too will make $1 million if you follow this. Bad investment. Really, really, really vet those kinds of programs. Like there's so many of those that are like shining lures, and you're kind of chasing them and you go, oh, this will be great. And then you find out that really, I could have wrote this or, whatever it might be. So yeah, some of those online programs, just cautious.
Last question. As you're like kind of going through your history of investments, right? I'm kind of curious, how has your decision-making process changed and what to invest in throughout the years?
I'm a lot more cautious about what I invest in now. I'm not going after the bright, shiny object like I used to. My first real consulting gig was for a spiritual retreat center run by nuns. And a good friend of mine was a former nun and asked me if I would facilitate kind of a strategic planning session for these nuns. And I agreed that I would. So it went extremely well. They were really pleased. And of course, I wasn't going to charge them. But I got a little certificate in the mail. And my payment was 6 days straight of prayers for me. And I've got that framed somewhere. I think it worked. I hope it worked. But yeah.
Oh my God. You have to show me that when sometime. Like
I will.
Yeah. Well, Michael, I will say I really appreciate all the wisdom and how open you were, especially about your pricing, your hourly rates, but more importantly, your experiences, because it's really interesting because there's this duality between like the very logical processes type of stuff, but then you talk about the inner work, the transformation. And I find that very, very interesting about you.
Yeah.
And so if people want to learn more about your work, how do they best find you?
Probably best to go to Mike at Scarpone, Scarpone Coaching, or you can go on the web, scarponecoaching.com. That'll get you my
Are you
website.
active on LinkedIn at all? Either?
I am. If you do a search on me in LinkedIn, I'm there.
Try and build up that social media.
I know. Thank you. And Facebook. Although I will tell you this, I invested money in using Facebook as a marketing tool, and it hasn't worked for me. It just hasn't worked. I don't know why, but maybe for some people.
Cool, Michael. So great having you on the podcast. Kind of weird with the technical issues, but I had a blast, and thank you so much.
I did too. Very easy. And when you get into the ring, let me know. I'll be there cheering you on.
When? Maybe. I kind of like my life without CTE and all that, but yeah.
Right.
Thank you again, Michael.
You got it. Take care, Kevin.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.